What's up, everyone? Today we are going to Jund some people, and it's going to be exciting. So, Jund has gone through a lot of different changes lately, and this recent update, I think, is going to be pretty good. This is a very more aggressive version of Jund. So we have Grimflayer in addition to Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant. Some people were cutting Dark Confidant for Grimflayer, but I feel like just having an abundance of 2-mana threats is probably the right way to go, at least for now. Just lower your mana curve, get rid of the clunky 4-drops, and, you know, Modern's always been pretty fast. So we have a little bit more 1-mana interaction. We have a Seal of Fire to go with the Grimflayer. Also combos pretty nicely with the Kalidases in the sideboard. Have a couple Grim Lavamancers, which I think are going to be good, but at the same time are kind of awkward with Grimflayer, even though they sort of work together. Like, once you get Delirium, obviously everything is fine, but when you're kind of struggling to get Delirium, it can be tough to have Lavamancer and Grimflayer on the battlefield at the same time, but if you have both of those, maybe you're winning anyway, so I don't know. I feel like it's going to be good. Todd Anderson basically endorsed this list. I changed a few things, but I do like it overall. So Lavamancer is pretty nice in that it is basically main deck hate against something like Infect or Affinity, anything with really small creatures. It's nice that it allows your Lightning Bolts and Seal of Fire to trade up against something like Thought-Knot Seer or Reality Smasher, and that's something that I'm pretty conscious of with this list, just how good Bant Eldrazi is. We have the full 4 Terminates. We're not messing around. So you could look at this and just be like, well, if you're willing to play 4 Terminates, that might mean that Path to Exile is just the better card, and that's certainly reasonable, but I do like the fact that we have Lightning Bolt, especially in this more aggressive version. I feel like a lot of games are actually going to come down to actually just, you know, burning them out or just kind of like getting under them and playing like more of a tempo game than Jund is really used to. And Raging Ravine is much, much better than Shambling Vents. Like, even against something like Burn, I found Shambling Vents to not be very good, just because it's so awkward to activate and it's not getting you a bunch of life. Like, you basically have to hit them twice with it for it to matter, and in the meantime, you're fading a draw step, and like, what if they draw a Skullcrack and stuff like that? Then you just waste your turn. So Raging Ravine gets the job done. Because of my lower curve and the fact that I want to use my mana every turn and everything, I only have 2, which might be a mistake. Todd's list had 3, but I really want to try out this second Copperline Gorge to give us 6 Scars lands total. And I feel like these lands are going to be very, very good in this type of deck since we don't have any 4-drops. But at the same time, we do have an abundance of 2s, so it's entirely possible that our 4th land, ETB's tapped, and that's going to be kind of devastating. But yeah, Reality Smasher and company are pretty big. That deck is very, very good. So we have a 3rd Thoughtseize instead of the 4th Inquisition. We have a bunch of Maelstrom Pulses, a lot of Terminates, Grim Lavamancers to team up with our Bolts and Seal of Fires and stuff. That's kind of about it for the main deck. I'm light on Liliana just because it doesn't feel very good in the format right now, and this isn't a typical Jund deck where your plan A is actually just trading resources. I do think that this deck is more interested in actually just kind of disrupting your opponent, keeping them off tempo a little bit, and then just kind of like nickel and diming them out and stuff. So like Liliana is not as important. I could also see a mix of Veil and Last Hope, because Last Hope is nice, and maybe that's a card I should have played with, but yeah, whatever. A couple Scavenging Oozes. I think these are still good just because of Dredge and the fact that it's still pretty good against Eldrazi, just being able to become a big threat on its own also and like gain you some life, give you a little bit of a buffer. But the main deck is about as simple as it can be. So for the sideboard, I'm hating on Affinity a decent amount. I have a lot of Ancient Grudges. I have Night of Soul's Betrayal. You could even categorize Engineered Explosives as an Affinity hate card, which I think is perfectly reasonable, although it is kind of clunky, and most of their stuff is 2-drops, and most of your stuff is 2-drops, but basically the big consideration here is that Affinity is very good. It is likely a good matchup, but I want it to be a great matchup instead. I don't necessarily want to take chances when their deck is very fast and explosive, and you know they can win a die roll, or your draw can like stumble a little bit or whatever. So I do want the full amount of Ancient Grudges. At least, you know, I'm playing 3. I think that's like reasonably the full amount that you can play is like 3 hateful cards. The 3rd one could be a Shatterstorm, but I'm a little worried about things like Thoughtseize and Spell Pierce, which are things that they commonly side in against decks like Jund. And yeah, I just want the cheap, you know, no frills, just 2 for 1. and I think this is just more effective than Shattering Storm, because once, like, they have Edge Champion, but like Grimflayer can go over it, and I assume most of the time I'm going to be keeping in Dark Confidant even if I'm on the draw. That could be wrong, but I think that's going to be my plan. And if you have 2 Tarmogoyfs, you can just go around Edge Champion. Basically, if you make sure to remove their Cranial Plating, then Edge Champion is not that big of a deal, so you don't necessarily need Shatterstorm to actually deal with it. At least that's my logic. We'll see how that plays out. If I do board in Engineer Explosives, that's still like another out to it. Obviously, that's not, really great, spending 5 mana to kill their 3 mana thing that they probably played off mana acceleration and stuff. But, if the game gets to that point, then Engineered Explosives is certainly an out. Kalitas, very, very good. There are still some, like, Voice of Resurgence, Kitchen Finks decks, basically the Collecting Company decks. And I think you want Kalitas for those decks. It's also good against Burn. Like, basically, if you connect with it once, I think that should be enough, because unlike Shambling Vent, your Kalitas can actually outrace their life gain, especially if they just, like, end up playing a creature for whatever reason. Like, then you have this, 5-power lifelinker that's definitely going to close the game out pretty quickly. But yeah, like, if you connect once, it meant that you were not dead the previous turn and you just gained 3 life. So, like, hopefully you're ahead and you can outpace them from then on. And you can certainly lose to a bunch of top deck Skullcracks or Boros Charms or whatever, but at least Kalitas helps, Collective Brutality is, like, the actual best card against them. I don't know. Like, a lot of the games play out in such a way where you end up losing with a bunch of excess resources that you never got a chance to use, and Collective Brutality is a way to turn those into things that actually trade with the burn deck, which is pretty tough to do since, their deck is just, like, stack based and we don't really have any interaction for that. So Collective Brutality is generally just going to be for the full amount every single time. It's going to help you get Delirium for Grimflayer, and that's basically all you need to do is just, like, play a Tarmogoyf, play a Brutality. Hopefully that's enough to win. Because you'll be able to win the race and whatnot. But Slaughter Pack combos pretty well with Kalitas, which I like. Is another removal spell for the big Eldrazi's, as a way to bring in Kalitas against something like Affinity, where it might not be very effectual, but, like, the fact that it shuts off Arcbound Ravager and the fact that you can play it with Slaughter Pact or Seal of Fire up and still just be protected from, like, them playing plating and hitting you, I think is really, really important. So Slaughter Pack combos really nicely with the Kalitas, and I kind of wanted something for Eldrazi, so that combination works out pretty well. Explosives is basically for Suicide Zoo, and Explosives is just always going to be good. Like, you're going to end up losing to their Death Shadows and their Tarmogoyfs way more often than their Nakados, Steplinkses, Swift Spears, Gnarlwood Dryads, whatever they play, but if they do have a triple 1-drop draw, like, Explosives is going to clean that up really quickly. Slaughter Pact in that matchup is not going to be great. It depends on how many Tarmogoyfs they have, but if they're just on Death Shadows and, like, Ranger of Eos to get Death Shadows, then Slaughter Pact is not really going to do the job. So another reason why I like the Grim Lavamancer is just because, like, they go down to, like, 5 life a lot, stuff like that. So it just makes it so they have to play a lot more carefully against you, which is pretty nice. And then the last card is the Slaughter Games, which is one of those cards that doesn't necessarily have to be there. I guess I didn't really talk about Cage, but that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. But yeah, Slaughter Games doesn't necessarily have to be there, but getting Primeval Titan out of their deck, or just, play against something like Ad Nauseam or whatever, and granted they're going to board in Leyline, which makes your Slaughter Games worse, but you just kind of have to deal with that. It's just a catch-all against the various combo decks, and it could just be like another discard spell or something, but we have Brutality kind of filling in the Duress slot, or the extra Thoughtseize in the sideboard type of thing. But I like Slaughter Games just because it's kind of a hedge against the matchups that are pretty bad. Like, Living End is, like, another one where you can actually ding with it, so it's pretty good. But yeah, I think this Jund deck is nice. It's a little faster, a little more aggressive, not as controlling, so maybe a little bit less of what I would prefer to play, but I don't think that deck is typically very viable in Modern, especially right now with how fast the format is, and with everyone playing, like, turn 3 kill, creature-based decks. I feel like just a more aggressively slanted Jund deck could actually be good, so let's get to it.